Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome to Critical Cafe Live, and welcome back. It's been a couple weeks for us, so we're going to be getting caught up. My name is Brian, and this is Crystal.
Hi.
Hi there. Yeah, so like I said, we were off for a couple weeks, so thanks for bearing with us. A little bit of not feeling too great, amongst some other things, but we're back. Everybody's good. No need to worry. If you're joining us for the first time, this Geek Philosophy channel likes to talk about all kinds of things, but namely, we spend a lot of time talking about role-playing games and D&D, but in this series, we talk about Critical Role, and we're talking about Campaign 3 of Critical Role and the latest goings-on. So if you have not seen the latest couple episodes of Campaign 3, just consider this the spoiler warning, but we're going to jump right in and start giving our geek philosophy of what's been going on with the campaign. Did I miss anything, Crystal, or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go.
All right, let's do it. All right, so as usual, we are going to head over to Critical Recap. Danny Carr does a great job of recapping the episode, which is great for us since we haven't watched episode 53 in a couple weeks now. So a few weeks since they were off for the last week of the month like they normally are. So let's read a little bit and make sure that we're on the right track. So this, as a quick reminder, is right after all of the stuff that happened where Chetney turned into werewolf form. Actually, Frida went out looking for him, and they had their run-in. So this is the morning after. So Chetney kind of regains his control, and he returns, and he's, wondering what's going on because he finds that Deanna is there after not really sleeping. Chetney apologizes once he finds out what happens, but Deanna just wants to know if he's okay or not. It's only when he sees, the damage that's when he's like, oh man, this is what I actually did. And so, it's sort of a wake-up call for them, no pun intended, with it being morning. But it was interesting that he gets to kind of talk a little bit more about that with Deanna and what's been going on with her. And, it's kind of a interesting scenario there in the morning. And then other people are waking up and they discuss what happened last night, and they wonder if the solstice is messing with Chetney or anything, or what's going on. And then Frida calls the experience a bonding session. So Frida's cool. And they went looking for Chetney because they were afraid of losing him. And he's recovered and he feels alive, but Deanna notices the puncture wounds on the shoulder, which we know might be an issue, and then casts Death Ward on Frida, vowing to always cast it on him, because if you remember, didn't cast it on him the last time, which was interesting. So let's chat about this. So
Okay.
If you are in the chat, by the way, feel free to jump in and chat away, and we'll bring in the comments as we can. If you're joining us after the live stream, then put it in the comments. But okay, Crystal, what do you think?
Well, Chetney did a number on Frida, but it's interesting to see that Frida really doesn't bother them, other than the fact that their coat got ripped. That's all that they really care about, because they can get themselves repaired. And I think that, her recasting Death Ward on Frida versus Chetney is probably a good move. Chetney's he's a hardy old, gnome. So,
Yeah.
But, I don't know. He went looking for him, and I just feel like he had enough control to get away from the group, and Frida followed. So I don't really have too much other than ow,
Yeah.
Whoops.
I'm still curious if there will be any, robo werewolves in any
Me
time
too.
in the near future.
That
So,
would be exciting.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. I also I'm interested to see how the dynamic with Frida and Deanna and Chetney play out over time too, just to see how, I don't know, it evolves a little bit from what we've initially just picked up. Because you got to think, like, it's just been like a day or so, right? Like that they've been
Yeah.
together. If that, it's just overnight or two. So it's sort of an interesting dynamic there. And while we have this split party, um, while I was a little bit like, splitting the party when it first happened, I hope they explore what they can explore while they have the other people on the show. Like, let's
Yeah.
make good
Yeah.
use of the time, type of thing.
Right.
So,
I
um,
agree.
yeah, cool. All right, well, let's keep moving. Um, so back to, oops, technical difficulties. Sorry, everybody. Let's try it again. Here we go. Mm-hmm. I'm failing. There we go. All right, it was taking a little bit. So, then they travel. They travel to Uthadern, where the glass blades allow them in after Frida explains that they're newcomers. They're there to trade. Chetney hides beneath Frida's coat because he's not sure if he's still a wanted man. Like, he doesn't know how long the memory is of what's been going on there. There are 3 discs that descend down. So you've got the Volition disc, the Deliberation disc, and the Grand disc. And they walk the Augur Trail down to the Deliberation disc and notice that the city's magical lights aren't working properly, which also kind of makes them think about when they tried to cast sending before, is there something tied to this? And so there's a little bit of a tension in the air. And so they make their way to the Vellum
Make it away.
Steeple. Yeah, make it away. And which is a big library. And Imogen voices her frustration about not knowing what's going on. And she's worried about Prodathos and that everyone could be harmed by the magic not going off correctly. And she's only alive because of the arcane and how Imogen has no idea if she's okay. And so Deanna comforts her, lets her know that her own power is divine and she still has magic, so the gods must be okay for now. And, despite this, they're kind of are spotting a few temples that have their gate closed. So that's also a little bit worrisome. And then they pass Ultgar's Chess, which is the toy store that Chetney used to work in. And it's bigger now. It's got a second floor. And he's kind of not happy about the elven guy that came there and said that children would always want toys made out of metal. And or would want them made out of metal. And that caused Ultgar to forget his roots. So Chetney stabbed Golkar in the hand and the usurper in the leg, because that was his highest security. She stabbed him in the knee. So we get a little bit more about Chet's backstory there. So yeah, so what are your thoughts about all this so far?
So magic isn't working right? Like, very obviously people are freaking out. Your
Yep.
temples are closed. You can hardly get any information at the library. They're like, everybody is concerned about what's going on in their little area. And there's so little information at all. Nobody knows what's happening. So it seems like our group probably definitely knows more than anybody else, that there are a lot of like changes happening in the celestial realms, I guess, or really the plane here with Prodathos. But it does, it's like the first moment you really think, oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
something happened. Is this just the solstice, the apogee solstice, messing with the magic? Because it seemed like it messed with the sending. Is it just shorting out right now at the height of it, or is it because some of Prodathos is already working? And then Deanna has her powers, so that god can't be gone. But it was interesting that she had felt him turn away, and she realized later
Yeah.
that it was fear. She thinks so. I do think we're starting to see the first signs that things are getting shaken up, and
Yeah, it is.
change might be on the horizon.
I think you're right. I think it's the first inclination that like whatever the plan was either happened the way it was supposed to, or it happened most of the way it was supposed to, as far as what releasing Prodathos was supposed to be, or whether or not like they cracked the seal, so to speak, and there's like a little bit of progress there. Who knows what the actual result was after the solstice? It's again, it reminds me of the whole Dragonlance stuff, like where there is just this closer tie to that the gods are real, and you can interact with them on this game world, right? And so the players are literally having an effect on not just the people that they're dealing with, but the cosmos itself and like the gods and everything else, which is a cool thing for games, but it also has like these big widespread ramifications
Right.
for your campaign world. So the things that are happening here, like we said, like this may be calamity level stuff going on, and we're only seeing like the little bits of it. So but it always starts small, right? It's always some little cracks in here, and these lights aren't working, and this spell isn't happening, and I
Yeah.
don't know. It's really interesting to see how it goes.
And then Chetney stabbed Ultgard in the hand, and
Yeah.
Dick Slitch, or whatever his real name is, Drick Slitch, Dick Slicks, I don't know, like in the knee. And that's part of the reason why he's fled, and he's a wanted
Yeah.
man.
It's so funny to me.
So,
Like, well, we'll talk when we get into the next episode, like how
yeah.
much of the other stuff they get into. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's a little bit of levity with the situation going on. It's just like cool backstory, I think, for him. All right, let's keep pushing on. All right. So we are in Uthadern. Knowledge exchange. So the Vellum steeple is open, but there's no one sort of manning the front desk. So Deanna calls out, an older dwarf comes from the back, and they claim to be scholars, and they have a quest away to like contact someone far away. Imogen does cast detect thoughts, and the guy's pretty stressed. And there is a mass magical disenchantment that went through the city. This is huge. And he leaves to go find someone to help them. Chetney turns invisible, or I guess he was already invisible. Can't remember which, but then he follows him to the back where he sees people frantically like researching, trying to figure out what's going on. There's an elven woman that's sent out to speak with the group, and it's Scribe Warden Ressa Uvesic, and she explains that like they're all suffering this sort of lack of divination magic. So just sort of like what they were having problems with sending, it's probably also scrying and things like that. And they're not sure if it goes beyond Uthadern. They've lost contact with the outside world, and some of the enchantments and the older magic has stopped working. So auguries, clairvoyance, divination, or divine communication, scribing, teleportation circles, and supposedly permanent older enchantments. So this is kind of crazy when older permanent stuff goes away. Imogen and FCG, they're talking about like what they experienced in Marquette. They explain things, they give more details. They also request some research into lewdness. The scribe warden reveals that the magically bound prisoners have escaped and are being reapprehended. And they have connections with a library in Rexingtrum, but the teleportation circle, again, it's not working, so they have to figure a way how to get the magic back. So yeah, lots of kind of interesting information there, especially the whole escaped convict thing. That's kind of, I don't know, how'd you take that information when it came across?
Well, it's interesting that they got teleported to the other end of the continent, right? Or the other end of what the plane, is it the continent or the plane, or
Yeah, a
they're
different continent, I
way
think.
far
Yeah.
away. And this is how much is being affected here. So,
Yeah.
I personally believe that that's probably happening everywhere. But it is really like upsetting that a lot of the city isn't working to these people. It's like all of a
Yeah.
sudden you wake up one day and everything, it's like you wake up and there's no internet. You wake up and
Yeah.
there's no, your car won't, nobody's car will go, nobody's car will start. Or I don't know, it would be
Yeah.
really widespread panic. So
Yeah. No, if we wake up, there's no electricity, no internet, and all the cars don't start either.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's a pretty significant deal, right? Like, there's post apocalyptic movies and stories that are kind of like about that, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
but this is sort of happening to them, which also shines a light on, like, in a fantasy world where things are run on magic and your characters, even when you create the character, you assume that when you get to these levels you're going to have the magic available to you, it's part of the game. When that magic starts going away, and the way it's like,
Yeah.
well, what do you do, it makes you wonder, like, are you starting to feel the crunch of it? Like, what happens when all my spells stop working?
Right, right,
Like,
right.
how do you
Yeah.
how do you make it? It's
And
sort
and
of
what
similar to
happens
what
when
happened.
your whole right, and then what happens when your whole being is based on magic, like Laudna?
Yeah.
That's
It reminds me a little
scary.
bit of, like, when this is obviously at a mass level, like you were saying, like where the whole world is likely going through this, but it kind of reminds me of campaign 2, when Ford uh, gave up on his first patron and basically quit, and then had no powers, right? And it was like, what do I do now? My whole existence has been tied to having these warlock abilities, and now I don't have them.
Yeah.
So,
And then the
um,
same thing happened to Opal, in EXU
right,
when she kept pushing her, like she cut off her patron, and then her patron in spite, took her powers away from her. So
yeah.
it's tough. It would be really hard. That's what you're
And we
dependent
did.
on.
Speaking of Opal, we learned something. I don't know if it was during this part or later, so I don't know if I should mention it. Well, we'll read through and see. But there was something where Robbie's character let them know that something was going on with Opal, like with the
Yeah.
turn to the darkness, right? So, like, I'm wondering how that is affected too, and if it's tied to what happened, because her issue was with Spider Queen, another
Right.
god. So, like, anyway, I don't know. Yeah, let's keep pushing forward and see.
And put a pin in that and come back.
Yeah, no kidding, because that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. All right, so knowledge exchange. Okay, new chaos. So this was interesting. So then they feel a big rumble, and they hear this metallic sound coming from somewhere outside. Scribe Warden returns, and Chetney sees her assign people to research lewdness. He rejoins the others, and they leave to investigate what's going on. There is a huge group of glassblades and royal guards in front of the now sealed gates to the Grand Disc, and there are a lot of wounded people that are pushing through and trying to get people away from the gates, and the nobles are rushing out of the side doors. The king and the queen are surrounded by the guards, trying to calm people, but they keep hearing, like, this slamming against the gates, and soldier says that something has attacked within the palace. Frida climbs up to a sniper position. FCG tries to go through a side door. The soldiers are kind of sealing everything up. FCG casts Fast Friends and convince a soldier to let him and his friends in, but Frida is on that perched position and has some trouble getting to them. It was pretty interesting with all the rolls and acrobatics checks and everything getting to that point. But it turns out they then get through, but then they're sealed
Yeah.
into the Grand Disc, and they're surrounded by bodies of guards. And one of the guards still alive, so Deanna heals her, and they find out that a statue within the citadel came to life and started killing people, and it was one of the great beasts of Velithil. And FCG thinks that they have to go after the beast, and if the gods are gone, then they might have to be the ones to do the right thing. But the guards couldn't take down the beast, so maybe Bell's Hells can go do something. And of course, power of friendship. So,
Yes.
yeah, that was a whole interesting, like, it escalated very quickly to them having to go
Oh
deal
yeah.
with this, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think that was in the moment while it was all happening. a couple people darted into the gate, and everybody's like, wait, 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 what are we doing? What are we doing? And they're
Yeah.
like, we obviously have to go this way or whatever. And so, Frida ended up kind of being stuck on the other side and having to make some acrobatic rolls because he was on this big, large chain trying to get across in time, and he didn't make it and fell. But then they ended up being able to get him in. So they all got in to find that there's this huge beast that slaughtered the guards. They're everywhere dead. And they finally find one who's like barely alive. And they stabilize her or them. And then, you know, I guess they don't. I think that they just learned from her that it's the statue that came alive. I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
if they learned yet that it was one of the great beasts or like what exactly it was,
Yeah.
other than she pointed or they pointed towards the area that the beast was leaving, and the group got a glimpse of it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So
But yeah, it was pretty evident that if maybe it was because those are the statues of the great beasts and that's what they put it together, but yeah,
yeah.
pretty crazy how
And then
quickly
and then of
that
course
happens.
FCG
So
made some off the wall comment about the power of
the
friendship will
power of friendship
prevail, and
that
everybody's
will
like,
make us one.
oh,
Yeah. Funny enough though. Let's
uh-huh,
yeah.
right.
Um all right, so there we go. So they stealth down the road, and they can hear like the footsteps of the beast, and they see that people are, and you got to remember this is inside of where people live and in this whole disc, right? So that there are people hiding in buildings and they're trying to stay quiet. And it turns out there's this massive glowing purple bull. It's about 9 feet tall. um, some of its body is like a starscape. And he's returning to the Citadel, and Chetney and Frida quickly sort of guide some of the people back to the gates. Deanna casts Guardian of Faith to protect the people. Imogen goes to the Citadel hoping to find a plaque and learn more about the statue. She's trying to figure out what is this beast, and then she sees the bull circling a broken pedestal and casts Detect Thoughts. And she's unable to understand the thoughts, but she can sense the emotions, knows that it's angry, frustrated, confused. And Imogen does find a plaque, but it's in Elvish. She can't read Elvish. So the others join her, and they accidentally alert the bull to their presence. Fern casts Dominate Beast, which actually works for a minute, and then the bull is charmed. And FCG casts Tongues and is able to speak with it. They ask where it wants to go, and Fern gently tends to the bull and gives it little scritches behind the ear and cleaning him up. And Deanna translates the plaque in memoriam of the fall of Molassimer. And hopefully I said that right. The bull is from the
Savalier Wood.
Savalier Wood,
Yeah.
which was known as the Luthul Forest, and it was an elven city that was sort of fell due to a cataclysm several hundred years ago. So this is sort of like ancient stuff we're talking about here, and yeah, it's an interesting sort of like nod to what's going on with the world, right? Like it's these, we've got magic disappearing, you've got temples shutting down, now you've got this creature, spirit, divine entity, who knows, from like, you know, eons ago almost, trying to like speak to them, or they're trying to speak to it, which was, you know, power of friendship. So yeah, what are you thinking about all this?
Well, the minute that like Imogen can tell that he was scared, that he was confused, and they started really trying to befriend him, and they cast a dominate beast, but they were doing it and then being friendly and trying to like calm him and trying to get him to like them enough that when dominate beast was over, he wasn't gonna rage attack,
Yeah.
and trying to give him what he wanted, which is out of the city. He wants to go home. He wants to go back to where he was from, the woods where he was from. And it's sad because this is probably one of those old enchantments that got dispelled,
Yeah.
old magic that was dispelled. So there's probably been centuries since he was actually alive. The place has been completely even renamed from, when he was there. So nothing is going to be like it was, but he can go back to the place. So, they endeavor to, I think, solve his problem for him and get him out of the city at least. And then, of course, Fern is putting ribbons in his hair and
Yeah.
chining him on his horn and giving him scritches. So I don't know. I think it's kind of cute. I mean, he's probably, would he be covered in blood? I don't,
I don't know.
with the type of being that he
Maybe
is.
with
I don't know. I mean,
maybe.
he's killed a bunch of people, but
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, didn't get described that way, but you could
yeah.
assume, I guess. Yeah.
But I think how Matt portrayed him was endearing. He's just this
Yeah.
big lumbering, ox-like or bull-like character.
But
So
but you also, like, again, the DM had on. You also got to think that a lot of what he was having to do was on the fly. He didn't know that they were going to do Dominate Beast. He didn't know that they were going to cast tongues. He had a map made. I mean, he had miniatures out. He was thinking they were going to fight, right? So,
right.
and that's just the game, right? Sometimes it goes in whatever directions the players take it. So, um,
But I
yeah,
mean,
really
like
interesting, right?
90% of this group is chaos,
Yeah,
and so you can't think that they're going to do what you think is the logical thing,
yeah. But
they're going to shock you.
that's true. That's true. But a lot of the times it ends up with combat. So,
Yes.
yeah,
If it logically is combat, though, you know what I'm saying? Like, a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of times they'll go straight to that, but this bull this thing just murdered a bunch of people, but they're like, oh, he's so cute. The cute
yeah,
factor weighs heavy.
yeah.
So,
Well, let's keep pushing on. Uh,
I hear you, Romeo.
all right, so the bull is named Umadara, and he was a sentinel beast of the Velithil forest and doesn't seem to know that he has fallen to corruption. Frida tells him that they know what it feels like to be ripped out of time and their home, but he can't kill anyone. He explains that the people attacked him first. He was scared and retaliated. When Dominate Beast fades, they've kind of got his trust. So he wants to get out, and they say, hey, they'll lead him out. So Tura gives Deanna a ride. Imogen and FCG run ahead. They cast calm emotion as they go, so they're trying to get people to calm down, return into their homes. They go to the gates, and Imogen telepathically explains that the beast has stopped attacking, convinces the guard to open the gate, and there are hundreds of soldiers outside, but it was the commander that Imogen mentally spoke to, so he asked them to escort Umadara out of the city. And even though it was a little tense, they're able to lead this giant bull safely up through the Augur Trail and into the woods outside of Uthadern. And Umadara still feels lost. He can't figure out where his home is, but he, thanks them and then heads south and heads toward the forest. Meanwhile, though, Chetney has been inspecting the thrones, and he steals some gems and he discovers a secret passageway that's an escape route for the king and queen. And when a guard finds him, he pretends to have been injured in the chaos and is led out. And he's like trying to get his injuries tended to there. And that's how that episode ends. So let's take a brief pause and chat about how all that went. So, yeah, that was especially interesting. I mean, the leading of the bull out was good, but especially interesting with Chetney and
Oh yeah.
the thrones and stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So it got tense there for a little bit, hoping that, no side tries to injure anyone
Yeah.
while they're leading the bull out. And, it's sad to me that he's still just kind of like, okay, well, I'll just go along, but I mean,
Yeah.
what else is going to happen? And then, of course, Chetney's back in the throne room looking for any kind of hiding places and trying to pull gems out of chairs and all kinds of stuff. And he does find a secret passage, and he follows it down, and it ends up getting him out, and onto the streets. And of course, a guard happens upon him, and he just acts like he got injured in the whole, shebang that happened, and played that off, and prevailed with his roles.
Yep.
So they all finally meet back up, I guess, and he's getting bandaged up. But for the most part, I guess it's like the best outcome that could have happened. And then, Chet, he's got some gems. So
Yeah. That's true. I think, and then that kind of takes us to the next episode. And I'm not sure if he met up with them at the end of that one or not. Maybe they pick up here. I'll have to see what it says. But yeah, it's like he's ready to. There we go. So let's see. So now, all right. So they're the heroes, right? So they come back to Uthadurn. People are happy that they're able to rid them of the bull, basically. Um, and a page informs them that the king and queen have requested a meeting tomorrow, and they want to recognize them for what they've done. That's when this is where they reunite with Chetney, and so they go to Deanna's home to rest, and it's when they have a little back and forth banter about where everybody's going to be sleeping. Deanna does not really recognize Chetney anymore. He's always sort of been talented and a force of personality, it says, but they met on vacation. So she realized they didn't really know each other very well, but she always liked that he was driven and passionate about what he did, and she wanted to be the focus of his drive, but Imogen can tell that Deanna is special to Chetney, which kind of makes her feel better. And Deanna has never felt really special before, so a little kind of intimate moment there. So let's pause. So yeah, it's kind of a nice, like, stopping in at her home. I also remember, like, she's apologizing. She's like, I didn't expect to have company. Like,
yeah,
so
yeah,
that was kind of funny too.
yeah. Well, and everything in her house is a little bit smaller too because she's a little person.
Yep.
But I don't know. I think we're starting to get a little bit more of Chetney's background now. This episode, especially, like we get a lot of Chetney's story. So this is just kind of the start of that. So I think it's fun.
Yep. All right. Well, let's keep going. I don't want to, like, there's a lot going on in this one, so we'll dive forward, and then we'll see if we need to go through two sections here or more than one. So Dream Phantom. Oh, this is interesting too. Dream Phantom. So FCG and Frida discuss Frida's recurring dream, and FCG wants to share the dream, and they head to the room, which has a bunch of sketches. One is of Deanna. It's a gift. Most of them are what Frida has seen in their dreams, specifically this globe-shaped Exandria sketch. And despite FCG not really understanding that the planet is round, because he's a flat Exandria.
He's a flatter.
um, yeah, Frida follows Chetney's advice just to let him work it out on his own time, and then they cast Shared Dream, and they both go into Frida's dream, and Frida appears as this warm, glowing light. The two of them move through the clouds, and there's a golden sky that is both Catha and Exandria. FCG realizes that they can see sort of a humanoid child overlapping Frida's form, and it seems sort of embedded, like Frida is protecting it, and then FCG describes the child to Frida, who has only seen the legs in the dream. So the two hold each other. They wake up still embracing. Frida sketches the child and recalls that they protected this boy, and they don't know who he is or what happened. It thinks it's part of the Aormaton duties that they had. Doesn't want to give up and live in the past, but he's really curious about what happened. And FCG wants to help, and Frida comments about FCG always helps, and even turned their bull into a friend. So, power of friendship. So they go to sleep, and Frida's still kind of thinking through the memory there. So, yeah, interesting kind of development there with Frida's backstory and what's going on with the dream, I think. And the fact that FCG gets to see another Aormaton's dream, I thought was really interesting,
Right.
because he doesn't
Yeah.
dream. So yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Um, I don't know. I'm happy for FCG finding another Aormaton built like him, well, Aormaton like him. And then the fact that Frida can dream is really amazing. And I love the fact that FCG is able to like ride along in a dream. And it was really kind of cryptic though, like listening to Matt describe things. I'm like, a baby or a kid or, huh? And then
Yeah,
Frida talks about how in the dreams he is that entity, that's him. So when he looks down, he can't see the child, he can only see legs. So because he's
yeah.
inside that part of the dream. So it was cool that FCG was able to describe to him what he was seeing, because Frida's never seen it. So I thought that was really nice.
So
But
here's you want to hear my crazy theory about it.
yes.
Here's my crazy theory. Goes back to last campaign. We know from the last campaign that the Kryn dynasty had this belief, and especially with what happened with even with what happened with Luthien, you could kind of tie this into it. But especially the Kryn dynasty, they had the consecution type of thing where like you could be um, reborn so many times, right? Like that you could die, and then as long as you were close enough to a Luxon beacon or whatever, that you could then be born again into this other body. I am wondering if the Aormatons were created by housing that soul or that being, like the heart is a capture, is like it's an offshoot of that type of magic that's then captured into this thing, in the hopes that you then don't have to be reborn again because you're in a body that can be fixed and placed into another thing, and that the Aormatons maybe that's where they got their thing for, like maybe that's where the spark of life came from.
Maybe.
um,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, it's kind of a half-baked theory of mine, because I'm not sure how that then relates to the fact that like you had a specific purpose and like quote unquote programming. Like, I don't know how that would have worked, but it just made me think about like, if is this a way of, in Mercer's world, of explaining how these artificial beings like came to life, you know?
Right. And they have souls.
Yeah. And tying it together with the already existing magic that's going on,
Right.
because they were introduced in the same campaign. The concepts were introduced in the same campaign. So it makes me wonder, like, and it was also introduced that like gemstone heart thing was what turned them back on. So I don't know. Like, it's probably not there, but it's just like a thought that I had of maybe
Well,
that's he's remembering a previous being, like, and that's him. Like the child was him
right.
previously or something.
Yeah. I
I don't
mean,
know.
that's totally plausible. I mean, that soul had to enter in them somehow. So,
Maybe they
and
were
it
prisoners, and
seems,
that's their way of like being in prison. Like, instead of getting a new body, maybe because you can't stop doing it, maybe like now you're imprisoned here.
hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's too far. I don't know.
Or maybe they were really special people.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it's
I
like
don't
that.
know.
What was it?
It's
That
an
the
interesting
show
thought.
that we were watching that had the what was it? With the you had the stack like that
Oh yeah. Um
carbon altered
Carbon,
carbon.
yeah, altered
Like it's
carbon.
like maybe that's the way of it's like a similar thing. Like if this is the altered
Right.
carbon of Exandria is like instead of going into flesh and bone body to flesh and bone body,
Yeah.
you then get put into this aormaton.
Yeah. Your sleeve is an aormaton.
Yeah, yeah, your sleeve. Yeah. Anyway, it could be a wild thing.
No, I
Let's
think
keep
it's
moving.
totally plausible. It's the
Yeah,
best like theory yet, I think, because honestly, it's still such a, mystery so far anyways.
yeah. All right, let's keep moving. Maybe, maybe. There we go. It's not their site, so anybody that's going to Critical Recap, they're doing great. It's the streaming software that I'm using. So, okay, so in the morning after all that, Deanna makes brunch, and FCG encourages Chetney, "Hey, go visit Olkar," trying to be his therapist again, and he doesn't want to go, and he says that he was once Olkar's second in command at the shop, but Drixlich came in and ruined everything, and Olkar sold part of the toy store to Drixlich, ruining Chetney's future. So that's when everybody got stabbed, and so the others finally convinced Chetney to go at least see the store, which is now called D&O's Toy Emporium. It's closed, but 3 employees are in the front. There's an older dwarf, which is Oltgar. And then he seems to have just lost the spark in his eyes, so to speak. Chetney goes invisible, and an orc mercenary comes out and quits and says, "I'm not going to finish the job." Um, Fern asks Olkar what happens. Say they've been selling these magical toys, and their bestseller was these imported Whizzle cages, which contained these Paimon firebugs. And the cage allowed the firebugs to be safely used as a nightlight, but now they've lost their magic because everything's losing its magic now. The firebugs have multiplied and they've taken over the store. Drix, I'm just going to call him Drix, uh, archive or arrives, not archives. He arrives and mentions that the toys are made by Oldgar, and uh, they're outsourced to other creators to carry out the designs. So Drix is sort of basically saying, "Hey, here's the guy that came up with the idea, but we're going to outsource the work to others." This comes into play a little later. The creatures are docile when they're little larval worms, but when they get exposed to higher temperatures, they become much more dangerous in their adult form. So,
Yeah, and that was that
um,
crascalid thing or whatever it was called, because there was the two things.
yep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and the crascalid is the other form. You're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we keep going, or we want to stop
Yeah,
and
just
talk
keep
about it
going.
so far? Okay. So since it's early, they agree to go in, and Drix gives Imogen a key to get into the room. Frida steals the key ring while Jetney casts Brand of Castination on him. Fern asks Olgar about Drix, and they kind of talk diplomatically about things. Imogen reads his thoughts and learns how despondent Olgar is because of Drix. They enter the shop. They find it soot covered and filled with all kinds of stuff, but there are a lot of metal modern toys there. They break a few of the toys, and Chetney's happy about that. FCG is confused by Olkar's kindness as compared to Chetney's stories. Chetney explains that Olkar lost his way, forgotten his roots, and even if the toys weren't popular, he should have gone down with a ship. This is when I think it's mentioned, "Hey," by Frida, that my coat is out of fashion, but now it's in fashion again. Maybe just needed to wait. They're interrupted by a swarm of firebugs. So Deanna makes friends with them via the speak with beasts or small beasts, causing the firebugs to land on her. Fern attempts to capture them with an air bubble. works for a moment, but then it agitates them and causes the fight to start. The swarm splits apart, and they're able to capture a couple swarms with Fern's casting of snare. All right, let's chat. Like, so, what are your thoughts so far about everything? Lots going on here.
Well, Chetney made Ultgar sound horrible, but really he's not. And then this Drix guy, he sucks. His voice, even like, the voice that Matt even had for him was this reedy, high, like
Yeah,
pompous tone. So, yeah, didn't like him too much. And then they get in there and there's these bugs everywhere. They try to befriend them. And then I don't know. I was yelling at the TV at this point because Ashley was trying to put him in a bubble, which could pop. They're bugs with fire. I was just like, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work.
I
So, of course, it
remember
didn't
you
work.
specifically saying, "Aren't you a fire druid?
Yes, like you're a fire druid. You should know
Do
how to handle these
something."
bugs. Do
they're,
something.
they're creatures and they're fire. You're a
I know. And
fire
then you were like,
druid.
well, what do you think she should do? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm sure she has a spell somewhere.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
But,
But
I
it's true.
think,
Like, it seems like these creatures are
yeah.
made for Fern. Like,
I mean, hello,
creatures that no fire. Like, man,
fire creatures.
yeah.
Pull Mister out and get Mister to talk to him or something. I don't know.
He could eat them as
Jeez.
he's,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. He could throw poo at them. I don't know.
yeah,
Something. Um, but there's swarms of these things though, and I think it just descends into madness a little bit with all of the ideas
yeah,
they're trying to throw, because I think they don't want to kill them all, but they've multiplied and they're
yeah,
in big swarms, and so they've got to do something because they are deadly in
yeah,
mass form, so
yeah. It's interesting. Especially one thing I was thinking the whole time is like, man, I guess it's good that it's made out. This stuff is made out of metal, because wouldn't all the wood have burned by now? Like, if they were like, yeah, don't tell, don't tell Chetney. So, okay, so Chetney breaks down the door to the bedroom and discovers that everything is covered in this sort of, um, stuff that's making this big cocoon, and the Crascalid has metamorphosed. Uh, that's probably right. Danny
metamorphose,
Carr wrote it. I'm going to agree with
metamorphose.
her. I thought it was metamorphized, but metamorphosed. What do I know? And Cass,
It
Cass,
changed.
yeah, it changed. It changed real good.
Baby grew up.
Yeah, it spots this massive spider creature on the ceiling, drops down, it attacks. Fern is grappled, saved by Frida. She polymorphs it into its worm stage, which helpful. Battle pauses. Imogen finds that there's a bunch of ledgers and receipts, and basically, Drix is like using child labor in
It's
Shady Creek
outsourced.
Run. Yeah. And then Ulkar's name, it's basically been forged on the documents, and it's turning over the shop. There's also some clockwork toy prototypes. There's some enchanted gloves Chetney finds, and they sort of wondering like, hey, should they leave the worm here for Drix? Or but Chetney's like, no, he doesn't want it to hurt Ulkar, or to hurt anybody else. So they take the baby out, run out of the city, trying to get it out before it fades. She slides down the cliff, a bunch of stuff. She's jumping, she's trying to handle the thing, she tries to like slide it and let it plinko down the cliff. And then it starts coming back at her. Luckily, the glass blades are there, and they take it down with a ballista. So let's keep going, because I think this is the last section, so we can kind of cover both of them. After all that, finally, Ulgar and Chetney reunite, and he tells Ulgar about, hey, you make great art, and it's incredible, and it's rare. and it doesn't matter if people aren't in love with it now. It needs to be something that he wants to do, and people will come back to it later. They show the documents that kind of prove what's going on. He knows that he just wants to make toys that that kids will be happy with, so he suggests that he sell the shop to him, to Drix, and then just start somewhere new, like a smaller shop, where he can tell kids if they're shitheads or they're okay, you know, naughty or nice. And then if Olkar knew about the children in Shady Creek Run, he's like, he didn't know. She does detect thoughts to make sure. And they have to trust that he didn't know, because the text thoughts didn't really work. And Olkar spent many years wondering the mistake that he made, and he's like, hey, he hasn't been happy for a while, and he says it's time to change, time to leave. He apologizes to Chetney, pays the group 400 platinum for their help. They're all nice, not naughty. And then maybe he'll get 8 goats and a sleigh and go north to Eiselcross. And Oltgar plans for the future. He leaves to see the king and queen of Uthadorn. I mean, yeah, this is I keep going back every time, like, we have all these things. I keep going back to the one shot with Liam, and that started this whole thing, and Chetney's character, and the whole Santa thing. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
So this was another time where I was screaming at the TV because this Crascalid thing has been polymorphed into its like larva form, and is still trying to bite them, by the way. Like, it's not a friendly baby, right? And she just stands there with the baby. And it's like the absolute last minute possible that she could actually get it outside of the city. She was able to run. She was able to do all this stuff. She mirthfully leapt down the little cliff area. And then, of course, it polymorphed back and starts, like, running after her. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Then the blast blades, right? Not glaives, but blades. With a B,
Blades.
not a G.
Blades.
Yeah. So then they light it up and kill it. And I'm thinking, well, why didn't they just do that to begin with? It was so unnecessary. So unnecessary.
Unnecessary complications.
So,
but hey,
yeah.
D&D.
So, then they all come back out. They find all these papers, which, hello, child sweatshop, child labor sweatshop workers. Tied to the group now, or that business anyways. And then the papers where they find where he's forged his signature all over it, so if he dies, he inherits everything. So it looks like he's setting him up. So I do think that the advice that they go back out and they talk to him, and the advice that they give him about starting over and going somewhere else and getting away from this guy is the best that they can, best thing he could do. It kind of sucks that he spent so many years building up a business and took on one bad partner somehow. I still think something else was going on. I feel like he was duped. I feel like he was glamored. I don't know. Something happened for him to all of a sudden take this Drixlich guy on as a partner, I think. So
maybe he was. But if you're gonna do a Santa Claus origin story, this is a pretty decent one to do. So, I don't know. I think it's funny.
Yeah, and then of course Chetney had to make it funny with his his jokes about naughty and nice, but trying to find other words for him, and then getting the goats in the sled and going north to Eiselcross.
What was that? I can't remember exactly how he did it, but like at the end, Matt was like, basically almost did "and to all a good night," but it wasn't that. Yeah. It was something else. It was really funny.
I do like the fact that Oltgar told Chetney that he looks at the scar every day that Chetney gave him in his hand and regrets the decisions that he made.
Yeah.
That he's not mad at him for what he did, that he
Yeah.
understands and he has regret too. So I like the fact that they were able to kind of reconcile. And he's because he was such a big impact on Chetney's life. He was his, he was his mentor. He was, who he looked up to. So he's like journeyman under him. So I think, all in all, I think it was a fun episode. I'm just
Yeah.
anxious. Like I feel like we've getting some filler stuff, like I need like what apogee solstice.
Yeah, I feel like um they're a little bit of a slow play after that, like of getting things going. Although, hey, this 2 days from now, I will say, um, Friday, it sticks in my head just because I remember the date. But we've got Marisha competing in the boxing match. So if you guys haven't heard, she's going to be what is it? I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue. Is it Creator Bash?
Yeah,
Creator Bash?
I think so. Yeah.
I hope I'm remembering that right. But you guys Google it, and you'll be able to see it. There is a way um, to view it pay per view remotely. It's for charity. A bunch of different personalities that are sort of celebrity on different streaming services and things like that are competing, and it's happening in our home state of Florida, actually, in Orlando. So that's where it's going to be. We're not able to go and see it in person, but maybe we'll check it out, via pay per view or something. But no,
Yeah.
it's a cool thing, and so that was all to say that it reminded me that Marisha has been training for this. I don't think he planned the game around it, but it was good that her character wasn't involved as much in this because maybe she had more time to focus on training and doing some other things and in preparation for this. As someone who has trained to compete in a combat sport, it's not something you want to take lightly when you're going to be going in the ring with someone else. So I think it's great that she is doing that. It's pretty cool. So yeah, so good luck to
Well,
Marisha
yeah, and if
and
any
everybody
of
else
you
competing.
follow, if any of you follow her on Instagram, she did a before and after picture showing her progress once she started training, and she's gained a ton of muscle, and she's covered in bruises. So she's been
Oh
working
yeah,
hard. Now she's going to really be able to pop.
that's
So
right. Yeah,
it's going to be fun.
yeah.
I think it is. I
It's
think it's Creators Bash.
yeah, it's cool though. I'm happy for her for doing that. It's always it's a cool feeling to go in there and test yourself in the ring against somebody and in a controlled way, and it's a feeling of accomplishment when you're finished and you can kind of especially when you're doing something that's like this, like where you're making money for charity,
Yeah,
which I think is great. So
they're just a good
so
group of
great.
people.
They really are. Yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
they're doing the right thing for everybody. Awesome. Well, uh, yeah, that's another Critical Cafe, everybody. Make sure you, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit the notifications so that way when we're going live. You get a notification
Yep.
right before we go live, and you'll be warned before we are on there. So that way you can jump into the chat and join us as we're talking and put your comments into the mix as well. But yeah, anything else before we close out?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
We
Well,
still have the
thanks
king and the
everybody.
queen to meet, right? They
That's
hadn't even
true.
done
Yeah,
that
we do
yet.
need.
This was just
Guess
their
we'll.
breakfast.
I guess we'll get that tomorrow. Yeah. Whew, we'll see how it goes. All right, everybody. Cheers. We'll see you next time.